Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome inside the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven, and I'm your host as usual. Joining me today is a very special guest, Mr. Nick Cothrel, who covers the Chargers for Sports Illustrated and ChargerReport.com. Nick, thanks for taking the time to join me, man. How are you doing tonight?
Doing well, Steven. Thanks for having me again. Always good to join you.
Yeah, man, excited to break down all of this, playoff preview. It's, an exciting time. Obviously, you got to cover a Super Bowl run last year with the Rams. So, fingers crossed. Hopefully you get to do that again this year.
We'll see. One game at a time, but we'll see.
Yeah, one game at a time. Obviously, that is the correct mantra to have. So, going to dive into all of this matchup with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I do initially want to get your thoughts here because obviously the Brandon Staley's decision to play the starters last week is all, it's all the national media can talk about when it comes to the Chargers this week. I feel like they're barely talking about the actual game. Everybody wants to dunk on Brandon Staley this week. What was your thoughts and what was your kind of reaction to the way that the Chargers went about that game last week against the Denver Broncos?
Yeah, I can't say I saw it unfolding the way that it did, right? I figured that the starters were going to get some work, and rightfully so. You want to go into the playoffs, kind of building off of that momentum that they had during their winning streak. But my issue was just is how long they stayed in that game. And obviously I'm sure a lot of your listeners, heard what Brandon Staley's reasoning behind it. He's kind of saying, it's not the preseason where you have 90 guys to choose from. Like, guys got to play. They wanted to kind of keep that same momentum. But at the same time, like, you can't put these guys in harm's way. And, like the quarterback situation where like they could have pulled Herbert and put in Chase Daniel after the second series. Like, there's no like player total like that. So that's kind of, that doesn't quite add up to me. I never really understood that. And honestly, like once Eckler kind of took that big lick, like in the first half near that goal line, that was when it kind of like caught my attention. Like, okay, maybe it's time to get these guys out before something really goes south. And, unfortunately for Mike Williams, we'll see what happens with his back, but it doesn't seem good. And missed 2 practices. Staley said he's getting treatment. He's day to day, and he reiterated yesterday he anticipates that Mike's going to be able to practice at some point this week. But so far he's 0 for 2, and tomorrow will be that last day.
Yeah, tomorrow obviously the last day of practice there, so we'll talk more about that, I'm sure, in a second here. But my thing with the way that they were used, I mean, I was sick this week, so I didn't get to talk much about it on our recap show, but I understand why Brandon Staley would want to play starters. There's a lot of coaches, Kyle Shanahan was pretty vocal last year about not resting starters and the benefits of actually giving these players reps. And, I was in favor of them playing, and I was in favor of them maybe kind of adopting the similar approach to the Buccaneers did, where it was like 3 or 4 drives, I think it was, for, Brady, Godwin, Evans, Levante David, Vita Vea, all those guys. They all played, I think it was 4 drives. And, if you look at the way that the game unfolded, the Chargers had, the touchdown drive, and then they punted, and then they had another long touchdown drive. To me, like, that's it. Like, that's all you want to see. Like, you want to see them iron out some kinks. You want to see them, like you said, gain some momentum. And then on defense, I think they gave it a touchdown drive, but then they had a 3 and out. And then, the Broncos moved the ball a little bit. And then Joey Bosa had that sack where Russell Wilson kind of fell over. That to me was like the end point. I would have been like, okay, like we're good. Like we've seen all we need to see. Let's get in the backups. So I'm like you. I think it just doesn't kind of add up to me why all these guys are playing into the third quarter.
Yeah, and like now I feel like you really didn't accomplish your goal because you played your starters most of the game. You ended up losing, so like you kind of lose the momentum, and guys got injured. So it's like literally like the 2 things you wanted to try and avoid just in this final week, you really didn't. So like you mentioned, it would have been nice to just get them in, get them out. They kind of got their feet wet, and now you can move on to the playoffs. And now they got some snaps in, but obviously didn't play the whole game. But just based on how that kind of transpired, that really just probably worst case scenario.
Yeah. I mean, thankfully, Kenneth Murray, Joey Bosa seem okay. I mean, I know once Joey kind of they mentioned on the broadcast. I don't know if you were listening to the TV broadcast up in or not, but
Yeah, I
you know
didn't
they
make the
mentioned
trip, so I saw everything you saw just from the TV
yeah,
broadcast.
so they mentioned Joey Bosa going into the tent. They never showed it, and then Joey's like on the sideline like normal. They keep on talking about it. Of course, he didn't go back into the game. So thankfully Joey's okay. I know he's on the injury report, but full participant in practice. Kind of circling back to Mike here. Um, do you think he ends up playing this week? I mean, obviously he didn't practice today. Brandon Staley, like you mentioned yesterday, reiterating that he is going to he thinks he's going to practice at some point in the season, or not in the season, excuse me, this week. So do you think he ends up playing? And if not, how do you think they'll adjust this week without him?
Yeah, it's tough, right? Like Brandon said that he thinks he's going to be able to practice. He hasn't done that yet. He leans on saying that he's gonna be able to play. Honestly, Steven, I have my doubts with that. Like based on I know you follow Daniel Popper. He tweeted that Mike needed help just getting to the team bus. Um, that's not nothing. If the guy can barely walk, and turning that around 6 days later,
Yeah,
obviously it's more of spasms than anything. Like the MRI came back, and he that seemed to really clear out. So that's positive. But at the same time, we haven't seen him out on the field, and that's not nothing. If he's not able to practice, I think it's really difficult to expect him to play. So right now, it's really a toss up. But right now, I'd probably lean in favor that he doesn't play. In terms of how they're gonna go about that, at the very least, they have Joshua Palmer, who's been in this type of role this season. Unfortunately, that's been the case, but
yeah,
that's kind of how they got there. They've had to overcome these mounting injuries, but it felt like week after week after week. So at the very least, they can kind of revert back to these prior games that have got them there, and then what Keenan Allen's able to provide. He's really been great. He had those 2 touchdowns last week. Before that, he really hadn't been scoring a bunch, but he's really been moving the chains on third down, really looking like him normal self. So obviously, not having Mike changes a lot. He really is the downfield threat. Other than him, they're really not hitting anybody deep. So that element will probably be gone without Mike. But they still have guys to move the offense, and they should still be able to perform. To a level enough to hang in there with the Jaguars and presumably beat them, even if Mike's not able to go.
yeah. I mean, obviously, it makes it that much more difficult. I would hope it's not just like a pivot to Michael Bandy. I mean, I know the fan base loves
Yeah.
Michael Bandy, but you're talking about two very different
Yeah.
skill sets there. I would love to see Keelan Doss or John Hightower get a chance in this one if they've given enough reps. I don't really know what that whole situation is, but just kind of expanding on the way this offense is performing. I feel like it has been kind of clicking a little bit more. The last 2 weeks against the Rams and like I said, the first half with the Broncos. Obviously, Justin Herbert's first playoff trip here in his career. So, what do you think the expectations should be for Mr. Herbert and the offense this week in their playoff debut?
I think the expectation should be high. Like you mentioned, like the offense seems like it's kind of starting to find itself a little bit. They fared pretty well the last 2 weeks. They kind of had their moments last week, but they started off pretty hot. I really think the big thing's been they've all of a sudden been able to run the ball in the red zone, and
Mhm.
I think that's been huge. And also having Mike and Keenan out there, the boxes are a little lighter for Joshua Kelly, Austin Eckler, all those guys to really run it. So they've been able to kind of commit to the run a little bit. And I just think having that aspect has allowed them to be a little more balanced. They're still gonna lean on Herbert, and he's gonna be they're gonna lean on his arm, and he's gonna be the guy that takes the offense as far as it's able to go. But kind of having that running game, I think has opened up the offense the last couple of weeks. And even if Mike's not able to go, I still would expect the offense to operate fairly well. I know that the Jaguars defense, they have some pretty decent guys over there. Their defensive front's pretty good.
Yeah,
Tyson Campbell is really coming on strong. at corner. So they're going to have their hands full. But really, there's no reason why this offense shouldn't be able to, produce to kind of to the expectations. I know there's been some lows in the year, but we'll see. Justin's played in the big stage before from playing in the Rose Bowl and stuff. Obviously, a little different now in the NFL, but I think he'll be able to like draw from that. And really, I mean, you know how Justin is. He's going to be up for any challenge. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we always know what primetime Herbert means, and thankfully this is not the early Sunday 10 a.m. kick. That would have worried me a little bit more. But
Yeah.
you mentioned obviously the guys the Jaguars have on defense. Is there an individual matchup that you might have a little pause about this weekend in terms of the Chargers offense, Jaguars defense?
Yeah, I could see like Trayvon Walker possibly, kind of being an issue for if he goes up against like Jamari. He's kind of like that. Trayvon Walker, as you know, Steven, you follow like the draft, like he's just kind of like that genetic freak. Now, Jamari has fared quite well. Like it's no knock on him. I just really think that Walker is just that good of a talent. And, I know his sack numbers aren't, astronomically high or anything, but he is a guy that does inflict a lot of pressure. And so I think that's going to be one to watch for. But like I mentioned previously about Campbell, I think he's a really an up and coming corner. So, not if they don't have Mike out there, and now they're just able to, kind of focus on slowing down Keenan as just kind of being like that go-to guy. I think that certainly changes things, but like I've said, this offense, they have enough pieces, whether they're hitting Austin Eckler out of the backfield and the guy's had over 100 catches this season. There's going to be ways to distribute the ball.
Yeah, I'm excited to see those Georgia practice reps come out for Jamari Sawyer versus Trayvon Walker. Should be a fun reminiscing day for the two of them. I want to shift gears here and obviously talk about the coaching matchup. Very interested to see how Brandon Staley attacks this one. Yesterday, he talked about having the ability to scout the entire season, right, and the benefits and the advantages that gives coaching staffs heading into playoffs. What do you think? I guess I'm just kind of curious how the Chargers approach this, because the quick RPO game that the Jaguars have give the Chargers a lot of problems in week 3. Obviously, there's a lot of different players like you mentioned here. What do you make of how Brandon Staley is going to approach this game in terms of the defense and the game plan?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because like in week 3, when things really got out of hand, Trevor played, pretty flawless. His numbers weren't, too over the top or anything, but he just didn't make any mistakes. And then they blew him out. And Trevor's been a guy this season who's gotten the ball out of his hand very quick. I think he ranks like 4th in terms of, getting the ball out. So I think it's going to be one of those things where the Chargers are going to have to kind of lean on a recipe similar to what they did against the Dolphins, not play some press, not allow much separation off the line of scrimmage, make Trevor hold on to the ball and see what happens. That seemed to really work well against Tua and the Dolphins. And that really was a masterful game plan by Brandon Staley and the players executing it. I think that's the way to go. That's the recipe. But we'll see. There's a lot of pieces to that. And now reverting from week 3 when James Robinson was a running back to now it's Travis Etienne. The running game is a little more diverse. Etienne is really good, both running the ball and as a pass catcher. So kind of a different wrinkle back there. But I just don't think there's too many common themes from week 3 to now. Just so much has changed. But I guess there are, like Trevor's tendencies. I guess you can kind of draw from that, just some of the things he does, drawn from personal experience.
Yeah, so much has changed for both of these teams. Obviously, us and the listeners know what's changed for the Chargers, but the Jaguars are playing without their left tackle. You mentioned James Robinson. I think Trevor Etienne only had like 6 or 7 touches against the Chargers in week 3. Was not a ton by any means. And, Evan Ingram has come on, as of late as well. So a lot of different variables here. I think one of the bigger questions that a lot of us have from the Charger side of things is what kind of happens with Joey Bosa and kind of Kyle Van Noy's role as an extension off of that, as Joey kind of works his way back, into full shape here. So, what do you think kind of becomes of that duo as Joey gets more acclimated going down the stretch here?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I don't think Joey is necessarily gonna play like the normal Joey Bosa type of workload this week. Just because it's tough to tell because Brandon says he didn't suffer a setback, but at the same time, now Joey's on the injury report. He wasn't on the injury report last week. I'm sure you saw on the broadcast. It seemed like I don't know, was kind of
grabbing at his groin.
Yeah, it was like, I don't know, was he grabbing it? I don't know what was going on there. And then he came out of the game about a quarter earlier than all the other defensive starters. So just kind of putting the pieces together. It seems like there's something going on there. I'm not sure what. So I would imagine Kyle Van Noy still is a factor coming off the edge. Maybe it's a thing where they rotate all three and they just try to keep all of the guys fresh. And really, when you look across the league at like the better defensive lines, like the 49ers especially, it seems like they just have a rotation of guys and everybody is fresh. And so maybe that's something that they look towards doing. Obviously, they can move Kyle Van Noy more into more of a traditional style linebacker, but he hasn't done that in so long. So that kind of feels like a lot to ask at this point in the season. So I'd imagine you're going to still see him more at edge than anything. But all three, Mac, Bosa, Van Noy, they're all going to still get their fair share of snaps.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that because I think Joey really looked like himself again. We'll see kind of how healthy he is this week, but watching the tape back from last week, I thought Joey was explosive and decisive, and so I'm excited to see that one. You mentioned earlier kind of not accomplishing the mission, and I think really the secondary, it might be the biggest culprit there from last week. Any concern for you as they kind of head into this, because they had been playing really, really well, in my opinion, and then kind of laid an egg on Sunday against Denver. So where's your head at in terms of what to expect from the secondary this week?
Real quick, before we do the secondary, I just thought, let me also add about Joey. He looked perfectly fine at practice today. I don't want to scare anybody.
Okay.
Like, oh my God, this guy's groin is just gone off on him. So like he looked like his normal self today. Maybe there's something going on, but like he's gonna play. I didn't want to.
No, I appreciate
lead people the wrong way. So in terms of the secondary, sorry, what was exactly your question about the secondary?
Just like expectations as they kind of look to bounce back from last week.
Yeah, last week seemed to be really hit and miss for probably the first time, and I don't know, it's probably a month and a half. Michael Davis has been great, and what he's been able to do since J.C. Jackson went down. Really, I mean, he hasn't been a liability at all. If anything, he's probably been their best corner. So I think that you're probably still going to see a little bit of the Jasir Taylor coming in on mixing in with Asante Samuel. What's been weird about the secondary is in the games that Derwin James hasn't been available, they've played better. So now Derwin is going to be available. It doesn't make any sense because clearly he's a massive asset to the defense, but that's just kind of how it's gone. I think everybody knows, having Derwin be out there, he is a vital part to that defense and what he's able to do and move around. So I'd imagine that they're gonna snap out of it. Honestly, my personal opinion is that this game, I feel like, is going to be, not necessarily like a shootout style. I don't think it's going to be necessarily low scoring, but I could see something in both teams in like the low to mid 20s, kind of something around there.
I feel like both teams almost are going to want to keep the ball away from the other offense here and try and run the football a little bit more, extended possessions and things like that.
Yeah, could definitely see that.
Well, Nick, this has been a real pleasure, man. Can't thank you enough for taking the time to join me tonight. Where can Chargers fans go and find your work if they want some more great intel and coverage ahead of this big-time playoff matchup against the Jaguars?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Nick Cothrel, and then all my work is on ChargerReport.com, part of the Sports Illustrated Media Network.
There we go. Chargers fans can't recommend a follow there enough. especially as we get, cranking up here into the draft coverage and things like that, free agency. Nick did a great job last year, despite not really being in the swing of things with the Chargers beat. It was still kind of getting out of the Rams beat a little bit, but definitely go check him out. Check out his work on chargerreport.com. And Nick, thanks for taking the time again. We'll see you soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Steven.